For many hams, the way into digital voice systems is through a hotspot. In this video, we'll look at the Pi-Star-based Jumbospot. I've been using both DMR and Yaesu system fusion protocols for a while now, and I've been surprised at the number of folks I visit with who are accessing the networks via a hotspot. It seems like just about everyone is either using a hotspot or has one at home. The repeater access to these digital networks appears to be mainly for folks who are away from home or out running errands or enjoying an afternoon at the park. Even hams who are driving across country tell me they are using hotspots tethered to their phone's Wi-Fi and data signals. With that in mind, let's take a quick look at what a hotspot is and why you'll want to consider using one. There are several different brands of hotspots at several different price points. They all do the same thing, but they do so using different technologies. More expensive hotspots like the DVM Mega come in at over $250. They're very capable and easy to set up and use. At the low end of the price range are the various versions of the Jumbospot hotspots that are mounted to a small Raspberry Pi computer. These can be found in kit form for about $80 and fully assembled for just over $100 US. These hotspots are a bit more complicated to set up, but there are lots of very detailed tutorials on YouTube that will take you through step by step the setup process. With basic computer skills and the ability to follow some instruction, you'll be up and running in no time. In this video, we'll do a brief overview of the setup that will get many of you up and running. When you get your Jumbospot, it should come with a micro SD card that has the Raspberry Pi operating system on it. The first thing you'll need to do is go to https://www.pistar.uk/wifibuilder.php. You'll need to tell your hotspot what Wi-Fi router to connect to. Since your hotspot doesn't have a keyboard to enter that data, you'll use this site to produce a small file to place on your hotspot's SD card. With the file in the root directory of the hotspot's SD card, plug the SD card into the hotspot and plug the hotspot into a USB power source using one of the micro USB connectors on the hotspot. The hotspot will boot up and connect to your Wi-Fi. It may take a few minutes, so be patient. When you see Mmd Vm scrolling on the hotspot screen, go to your computer's web browser and type in http://Pi-Star. You'll get a screen that has a red header that says Pi-Star Digital Voice Dashboard. Select Configuration to get started. If you get a password prompt, the default Raspberry Pi credentials are username, Pi-Star, and password, Raspberry. Since I've got my hotspot programmed already, let's jump into the programming screen and look at the settings you'll need to make. As we do that, if you find this video helpful, please click the thumbs up button below the video and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. Subscriptions are important to small channels like this one, so I really appreciate it. Click the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos. So when you've logged into your Pi-Star device, you're going to get this display. Now, this part right here will be empty, this will be empty, and it'll just say the Pi-Star Voice Dashboard because you haven't added your call sign yet. Since mine is active, it's going to show the call sign. Also, you'll note up here, I've logged in using the IP address for the device instead of the Pi-Star login that I've shown you previously because I have two Pi-Star devices on the network. So at this point, when you log in and you have this shown, you've got a couple of choices here. And we're going to start with the dashboard, which is where we are, and it'll be blank for you, as I mentioned. We can go to admin or we can go to configuration. So let's go to configuration, and you can see that we have the pop-up that comes in for a password, and so it's going to be pi-star, and the password is the default is raspberry. And then we'll sign in. So now with the digital voice configuration page display, let's look at a couple of things here to get your FT70D running on Pi-Star. First, we've got just some information about what's going on happening here. We've got the controller software. It's the Mmd Vm Host. We're in simplex mode. Now note that there's an Apply Changes button below each of these blocks, and if we make changes in those blocks, we'll need to apply those changes. Now the next block is the Mmd Vm Host Configuration, and here's where you can pick the mode that you want to run. So in this case, we're just going to run YSF mode, and so I've got that turned on. The button is red. We could run D-Star, these other modes. We could run a YSF to DMR or YSF to P25. As you learn more about it, feel free to experiment. But for us, we're just going to get up and running on YSF mode, so I've got that listed. Hang time here are the defaults, and it just means the amount of time it's going to listen in on one of these channels before it allows one of the other channels to take over, and it moves on almost like a scan. At the bottom of this row, you want to make sure that you've got your OLED type identified. There's some to choose from. This Jumbospot uses the OLED type 3, so I've got that selected. And as I recall, I just left these the way they are. So you'll want to then at this point click Apply Changes. This display will go away, just the header will show, and then a few moments later the display will reappear. In the general configuration box, you want to do a couple of things. First, put the host name. So it may be Pi-Star, it could be Hotspot, whatever it is. Now this is my second Pi-Star device on my network, so I'm calling it Pi-Star 2. My node call sign is my call sign, Alpha Alpha 7 Juliet Mike. My DMR ID is there. I've entered that in. The frequency that I'm using for this hotspot is 432.8 megahertz. I put in my latitude and longitude. My town is Phoenix. My Maidenhead grid square I've entered. I'm in the United States. For the URL, I'm using my QRZ profile page. So if someone was going to try to look me up, they could find me there. The modem type is important. There's a drop down here, and there are a lot of choices. And so we want to make sure that we are using this one here. It's the STM32DVM Raspberry Pi Hat GPIO. That's what makes this talk with the Jumbospot modem. I've got a node type. I've got it as public. APRS is an APS server in Texas. It's fairly close by. I got my time zone and my language. So at this point, if you've entered these things in, click Apply Changes. Again, the display will disappear. It'll make the changes and it'll come back. Now, in the Yaesu Systems Fusion configuration, there's not much really to do with YSF. And so the startup host you'll choose from, and there are a ton to choose from. And so this is going to be the YSF room you want the modem to initially connect to. And so in this case, I've picked the YSF room 64230. That's America Rag Chew. And it's a bridged room, so it will allow me to enter that room, and then I can use my WiresX command to go other places. And so it's a bridge to WiresX. My uppercase, I want to turn that on to uppercase host files, because in this case the FT70, as this little pop-up note shows, only has uppercase, so I want that on, and I'm not going to worry about the wires X pass through. So I've made a change there. I'm going to apply those changes. So let me click Apply Changes. And you'll see that the display disappears. That was about 45 seconds or so to get to this screen. And then now it's come back. So that's the process. I've clipped out some of that dead time. So this total apply changes things was just under a minute. So now you can see that's red instead of where it was turned off before. So firewalls, I just kept them as the defaults. All of these things private. Here's some of the information about my configuration down there in this box. And if you want to put a password on remote access, you can do that there. And I'll let you read about that with the Pi-Star documentation. Okay, so that's really all there is to do to get this thing configured. At this point, what we're going to do is point out just one thing here in the YSF System Fusion, and that is it says to update required if changed. And so I changed that. I applied the change, which means then that I need to go up here to update and click it, at least with this version of Pi-Star that I'm running right now. So you can see it opened a command window, and then it's going to do a number of things with my my little Pi-Star device. It's going to update various programs. It's going to update various host files, and you'll see that listed in the command window as it works through. And again, I'm going to kind of cut some of this short because you don't necessarily want to watch these commands come up. So here you can see that it says finished, it's done. And so at this point, since I'm done with the configuration page, I'm going to go back to my dashboard. So let's take a look at a couple of the things in the information that we see here on the dashboard and why it would be fun to keep the dashboard open if you're in your shack and working with your FT70D. One of them is you can see the traffic that is on whatever it is you're logged into. So in this case, we can see that the last transmission that was made just a few minutes ago. The call sign of that individual is right here. And then in this column is an important column, and it shows the bit error rate. And so with the bit error rate here, he came in with pretty much a perfect signal, no bit errors at all. Here, when we look down here, we can see that I'm logged in, but I haven't really done anything. So let me just do a monitoring call into the station. You should be able to see me come in up here, and you'll see what my bit error rate is. Alpha Alpha 7, Juliet Mike monitoring. So with that broadcast, you can see my call sign came in up here. And my bit error rate is orange, which means I've got some error. 2% or so of my transmission packets were lost. So I can see that down there. Now, that's important because as this gets higher, the quality of the audio of your transmission is going to suffer. So I normally try to keep the radio kind of away from my mouth. And typically I run with about a 1.5 to a 2.2 bit error rate. And so that's going to be important because there is something you can do about that. So let's take a look at that for just a second. We're going to go back to our configuration. We are going to go to Expert. We are then going to go to Mmd Vm Host. And you can see that there are a lot of things that we can make changes to here. And I would encourage you in this expert mode not to mess with them, except for the one thing we'll point out right now. So if we scroll down to modem, and here is the modem block, we can see these two items right here. It's the receiver offset and the transmitter offset. Now, with your Jumbospot, you may have a piece of paper that came with it that's going to have a number printed on it. That number can be a negative or a positive number. And if you have that, then you can set these two boxes to that number. What that number represents is the offset or the error in the modem. And so by making this change, you can align the modem to the receiver, and so that you can reduce the amount of the bit error rate. My first Pi-Star came with some instructions, and that number was printed on it. Now, the second Pi-Star I got did not come with that number, in which case all is not lost. It's simply going to be a matter of doing a little bit of experimentation. And so for me, I found when I started at like -300, I had a big bit error rate, went down to 200, still was pretty big. 100, it was getting better, but still not very good. 0, it started to climb again. And so I kind of zeroed in on -50. So it took 3 or 4 tries to get that. The other thing you might do is take the cover off your Jumbospot and see if the people who put it together put a sticker on the inside that gives you the transmitter and the receiver offset. So there are 3 ways to deal with that. 1, if you got instructions with the number, very good, use that number. 2, if you want to peek inside and see if there's a sticker on the inside, look and see. And if not, just experiment a little bit with anywhere from, say, -400 to +400, and just kind of play the high-low game until you get a bit error rate that is down there around 1%. When you've selected that, again, click on Apply Changes, get out of the expert mode, go back to your dashboard, and make another transmission, and hopefully you'll end up in the green. 2% is okay. I've gotten good feedback on my audio quality at 2%, but as you work in this digital voice arena, you'll discover that when you see people come in here with 3 and 4% bit error rate, they're going to be kind of hard to understand because the reconstruction of their voice is missing packets and missing information, and so they're going to start to sound pretty choppy. When you've got the settings selected, go back to the dashboard and explore the information you've got displayed. You're supposed to be able to set the hotspot to work simultaneously with multiple protocols. I was able to do that, but not well. With my hotspot configured for both DMR and YSF, linking the FT70DR to the rooms using WiresX command often failed. My thought was that the hotspot DMR talk group I often listened to and that was usually received by the hotspot was just too busy to allow the FT70D to break through on YSF. Rather than switch my DMR settings on and off through the dashboard, I decided just to add another hotspot. Use your router's ability to identify what's on the network and note the 2 IP addresses listed for Pi-Star. Otherwise, use a free program such as Advanced IP Scanner to scan your network while both hotspots are on and get each IP address that way. Then instead of logging into your Pi-Star with the http://Pi-Star URL in your browser, access them via their respective IP addresses. You can have both open in separate browser tabs if you like. Next, we need to program a simplex channel into our FT70DR. Well, now that we've got the Pi-Star program to accept the radio signal from our radio, we need to program the radio to broadcast on that signal. And so here you can see that I've got a channel, it's my number 1 channel, set for the hotspot. Now let's go through the programming just real briefly. In my review of the FT70D, I go into a little bit more detail, so if you want to watch that, that's great. Otherwise, here's just kind of a thumbnail version of that programming. So first we're going to go to the VM and go into the VFO mode, and then we're going to set a frequency, and we can do that using the steps of our that we selected in our radio to dial the frequency, or we can just type the frequency in here in our panel. And so let's do that. It's a little bit quicker. So let's set up 435 800 megahertz as our frequency. Now, if you've been watching closely, you know that the frequency for the hotspot is 432.8, but this is just a programming demo. I don't want to end up with two channels going to the hotspot here on the radio. So we'll just say that you set your hotspot to 435.8. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to press the function key, and we're going to go down to the 0, which is the repeater, and we want to make sure that we're on a simplex channel. And so you can go repeater plus, repeater minus, but we want it to be simplex. The next thing we're going to do is go back to frequency, and we're going to do a frequency transmitter power. We want that power on low since we're just broadcasting to our hotspot. We don't need to go miles and miles. So we've got it set on low. Again, using the knob, you can choose high, medium, and low. We want low. And then next we want to go into the squelch type. So again, frequency, squelch type, which is the number 5. And we want it off because we don't want to broadcast a CSS type tone. We can go into pager. You've looked at these before, perhaps. Tone, if we were a regular repeater. But in this case, we're going to our hotspot, so we want the tone off. So now we've got the key elements here of our programming all complete. And it's just going to be a matter now of holding the VM button in with a long press, and then you can see that the little F in the box is flashing and the next available channel is flashing. So we can assign this to channel 11, and we would do that using the instructions here in the book. Now at this point I'm going to bail out of this simply because I don't want to program a second channel that goes to a dummy frequency. But in any case, as you move forward, the next step is going to be to use the dial or the keypad to give the channel a name and then to assign the channel. Now you can also, as is described in the instructions, move this to a channel that already has a frequency. If you choose to do that, you're just going to change the knob and change the frequency. It's not flashing anymore, as you notice, because there's something already assigned there. But if you wanted to put it there, you would. You'd make that assignment. The radio is going to come back to you and ask you, are you sure? You say, yes, I am. And then that will become the new channel that's in that particular memory spot. Just as a brief overview, set the frequency using the keypad or the knob. Go to frequency, set the repeater to simplex, frequency to set the squelch type to off, frequency to set the transmitter power to low, and then just assign it to a memory. So that's all there is to it to get the hotspot frequency programmed into the radio and then being able to easily select the channel and access your hotspot via the FT70D. So now that we've got the hotspot programmed and connected into our home network and the FT70 set up with the corresponding simplex channel for our hotspot, we're ready to go. The dashboard provides some good information, so when I'm using the hotspot in my shack, I usually have the hotspot dashboard open and visible. When someone transmits in the room I'm monitoring, I can see their call sign. If they sound kind of scratchy, I can look over at the BER column and see what their bit error rate is. I can also see what mine is. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, my experience has been that the vast majority of hams access these digital voice modes using hotspots. You can spend a little or a lot depending on what your budget will bear and whether you value ease of operation over hotspot cost. Regardless, you'll be on your way to enjoying communications with hams all over the world. Please don't forget to smash the thumbs up button and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. 73s, and thanks for watching.